Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Live and Give show. I am Nguyen alongside my lover, aka Jaime Gonzalez.
Hello,
Well,
hello.
so we have today's discussion. We're going to share a little bit, kind of the secrets behind how we grew from not even a zero, we grew from a negative net worth and scaled to, an 8-figure net worth in less than 10 years. And so we want to share the journey, share the tidbits, the backstories, and hope that you can implement some of our strategies to move along that journey for you as well.
Welcome to the Live and Give show with Dr. Jaime Gonzalez and Dr. Nguyen. Join us as we share our experiences and those of other experts in their fields who've discovered financial security while creating a pathway towards giving back to others.
All right, so let's dig deep in some strategies that we've been really able to utilize in our own journey and in reflection in even just 10 years. To think that, we were not even, in a negative net worth. We had so much debt still. To be able to not just even, get out of that. Before, I remember when I was younger, my thought process was, if I could just make 6 figures, if I had any type of opportunity that I could make over $100,000, at that point, my mindset was like, man, that was if I can achieve that, that was going to be pretty big. Right?
Mine was lower.
Yours was even lower.
I was like, if I could make 50K, back in whenever we got out of school, I was like, man, I'm going to be good, but times have changed.
Yeah.
And we have changed,
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the big topic of today is, not only, how did we get financially from a negative to an 8-figure net worth, but like, what were the strategies, the mindset, the people, and who did we have to become in order to really be able to grow that? Because I remember thinking, man, 100,000, like I was looking up salaries and different jobs and, what positions, what the average salary would be and what I thought would be realistic. And I was like, man, if I could make $100,000, oh, it's going to be hitting it big.
was this in college or?
Yeah, I started looking up salaries in college
Mhm.
to kind of figure out like who gets paid what position would I want to do. And, back then I was entrepreneurial, right? And, but we always had small businesses. It's not like we had big businesses where we saw big money, so I was still seeing small money as an entrepreneur, but I realized how much work that was.
Mhm.
And so when I decided, to go from, I was in Tulane going to business school. I did accounting, I did finance, management. I wanted to travel. I knew I liked to travel. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so I was like, okay, let me go ahead and do that. I'll go to business school, learn finances, learn accounting, learn management and marketing with the hope and goal to be in international marketing.
Mhm.
That way I can utilize my skill sets there. And then I did a summer job and became an optometric assistant. And then I saw, wow, there's an opportunity for me to become a doctor. And so I started looking up what is the average salary for an optometrist and what are the different practice modes? And back then optometry didn't make a whole lot, but it ranged from anywhere from about $70,000 to, if you were really doing well in your optometry space, to making about $150,000. And I was like, man, that's what I want to do.
Mhm.
That would be achievable. It seemed like I go to school. I get my bachelor's degree in my undergraduate. And then I go to 4 years in optometry school. And then another year or so if I want to do specialize in anything, right? And I was like, I can do that. That's manageable and more realistic. And so I pivoted from my business curriculum into optometry and kind of doing that concurrently.
Mhm.
But that was kind of my mindset back then. And I want to share how that shifted through time. But at that time in college, that was kind of the game plan. How
Mhm.
about you?
So, like I said earlier, my goal was 50K. I wanted to make double what my parents were making, right? So they were making, 25,000 a year each, if that, that I remember. And I was like, man, if I can make more than them, I don't think I would struggle, very much. I didn't want, $1 million a year or anything like that. That was just not me back then. I guess I didn't have, huge dreams like we do now. Right.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, my mindset, was thinking small, living comfortably and pretty simple. And so whenever I was in fifth grade, I already knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an eye doctor, and I had, a great experience with an eye doctor back then. And so I didn't have plan B, so it was like, okay, well, let's go ahead and start studying. I did, really well in school. I love school. I love to study, and I love to learn new things. And whenever, I was in college, I graduated top of my class, and I was like, okay, well, it's time to start looking up some salaries just to make sure I'm going to make 50K. Right. So I was like, okay, well, they're here in the Dallas area, they make good money here. So I was extremely surprised. And I was like, okay, well, all I got to go is, 4 or 5 more years after college to school, and then let's see what I want to do. And, back then I didn't have a mindset of becoming an entrepreneur, so we talked about it in one of the shows is that was not in our family. We work for companies and for corporations. And I mean, I didn't have a mentor back then, teaching me things. So I was just thinking too
How
small.
how much did you make on your first job, and how old were you?
So I was almost 16 back then, and I work at Eckerd Drugs, and that is CVS now. And I made $4.25.
$4.25.
$4.25. And so I was there a couple years, but after 1 year, I got a raise. It was, yeah.
How much of a raise?
To $4.35.
35.
I got 10 cents raise, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is not where I want to be. But the first year, you're making money, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're still living with your parents, so you don't have, any liabilities,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like, okay, well, and then my dad gave me his truck, so I was like, well, all I got to do is just pay for gas.
Uh-huh.
Because he was paying for the insurance and for all the maintenance, and I would change the oil, and that's pretty easy, is spark plugs, things like that. So, but yeah, it's no liabilities, and $4.35 an hour. But
So making $4.25, and your parents are coming from these humble beginnings. I mean, and your dream is to become an optometrist, being your first doctor in the family. Like, how did you think you were going to afford this?
And I didn't know. So, whenever I was applying for college, and I had to get, financial aid, and the financial aid didn't come until like a week before college started. So that was very unknown, and I had to apply for everything. And, I didn't have any help. Again, no one to kind of really look up to at that point in time. Because not a lot of people in our family were, graduating and, becoming doctors and things like that, and attorneys, or, a high profession, which we think of now. But yeah, you have to do it on your own, so, and you have to actually, it wasn't online or anything like that I can apply. I actually have to drive to college, and it's a little bit of a drive, but you just work with what you have, right? So, but yeah, I think once you get in college, and you start meeting other people, and that they're thinking much bigger than you are. So that's whenever I first realized, I was like, man, they want to be like, I had a friend, a really close friend, that wanted to be a surgeon, and an anesthesiologist. And I would see him put the time in,
Mhm.
so I was emulating. I don't think he knows that I was doing that. I've never told him, and
Mm.
that I was emulating him, because he was passionate about
Mhm.
what he was going to become and what he was going to do and how much he was going to make. And his family, was did very well for themselves. So whenever I got invited to his house, I saw, okay, this is a possibility. They are professionals,
Mm.
and I didn't have any friends like that,
Yeah.
So all my friends, were in our neighborhood. I mean, we didn't have much, right? So, and I didn't have friends that were well
So that was the
off.
first glimpse of eye opening
Yeah,
in your mind, more like what was possible,
yeah.
what your
So
dream
in
was.
in actuality, it was like he was becoming my mentor. That was
Aw.
my first like mentor that I was looking up to. So, and I'm just kind of realizing as I'm talking, I'm realizing how much of an impact he had on me. And again, I don't think he ever knew, right?
He doesn't know till this day.
He
Do
doesn't
you
know
know
to
where
this
he is
day.
today? We need to reach out to him.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think he moved to California, but yeah, he's there practicing. He is anesthesiologist. He's very
Wow. So he
successful.
has carried through with his vision and
Oh
journey.
yeah, yeah. So,
Wow. Okay, now I need to know who this is. Go find this guy.
that's right. But Amir, if you're out there,
Oh.
I really looked up to you. So thank you for everything that you've done for me.
Oh my God. This is the first time I'm hearing this story,
Mhm.
as you're reflecting back to be like, wow, how did you make that shift from humble beginnings of where you were to have
Mhm.
the dream of wanting to become a doctor and like doing this process, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's a big part you mentioned, that's a big part of it is as we're growing. And because especially if you're around and we're not around people that we can see that that's possible. I mean, we didn't come around money. We
Mhm.
didn't have big people who were doctors or wealthy or like that wasn't part of our world,
Mhm.
right? To be able to even envision
Yeah.
the possibility of that, right?
Yeah, and I think what we do now with some of our friends, it's we realize that our friends can become our mentors,
Oh yeah.
and I didn't realize this till, that particular day. And I was like, someone that, that's pretty much on the same level, but, they have a different passion, a different vision, a different work ethic, so they can be a mentor. They don't have to be a paid person per se, or someone that's already extremely successful, but someone that you're looking up to for a particular reason, right?
Mhm.
So they can, mentor you, probably not one on one, but just looking at them on what they do on a regular basis, and that's
Right.
what we do with other people. It's like with our mentors that we paid, and whenever they're on stage, they're the same person usually that they're off the stage. Great people
Mhm.
on the stage, and then great people with other people that they interact with and with us,
And
right?
that's
So,
important, right? You want consistency and character of who you want to allow in your inner circle. Um, I talk to your family and kind of knowing you and seeing you through your 19-year journey. I always hear, Alma, which is his older sister, and Oscar, which is your brother, and then talking to both of your parents, how at a very young age that you were very different than all the other kids in the sense that you had a level of dedication and commitment. You were the nerd, like always studying, staying up late, super dedicated in your academia at a very young age where you were driven. And that carries on to your adulthood and to where we are now. And I think that it's a big driver of your success.
yeah, and I think we mentioned it, and we've said it on stage before. It's whenever I was going into the dumpsters and I was seeing people looking at me going into the dumpsters, and I didn't want to do that anymore. Right. It's like, what am I doing here? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I am helping my family, but what am I going to do in my future? So how my kids or my wife, I have to be someone. I have to be someone for them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just where a lot of the success that we've had have come because of some sort of pain, or hurt, or if someone does us wrong, we kind of, and that's something that ignites us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to sit here and get extremely sad for days, and it's like, no, we got to step forward, and what can we do from it, right? So
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big driver, the level of discipline. And, when you hear about grit and perseverance and needing to stay the course, right? Even if we don't know all the hows, I think a lot of people get lost and don't take action and move forward because of fear of failure, because of uncertainty, because of, just people want a safe space, right? And sometimes taking that next leap and staying the course if they don't see immediate return on their investment of time or money, they jump to the next best thing. They jump to the next thing. And so the level of commitment, perseverance, and grit, I think, is a big part of the equation when you're talking about scaling both your
Mhm.
financial business and in your self-development journey,
Mhm.
right? Staying that course and being committed. And when the deeper that you can understand your why, and I talk about how the why always changes through
Mhm.
your journey. We at a young age were driven a lot because of our pain,
Mhm.
right? And that was a driver that fueled us and ignited us to move forward. A lot of positive came out of that pain,
Mhm.
right? But in this stage of our journey, we're pulled more by inspiration of the impact that we want to create, right? And so when we kind of look at people who are like, okay, I'm stuck, and we've all been stuck, trust me, right? And where we're like, okay, I can barely make ends meet. And so, taking you back to where we are when we talk about a negative net worth. I mean, Jaime and I, being students, I mean, we were, fortunately, we both had scholarships in for undergrad, right? Had we not had that scholarships for our undergraduate degree, and then have to add on to that with our, doctorate degree, I can imagine how much more debt we would be in,
Mhm.
right? But this was back when we graduated in 2006. I mean, Jaime alone came out with about 170,000, right? Or something like that, or 160,000. And I came out with
Mhm.
175. So I think combined, we had close to about $350,000 of student loan debt. And that was because, and I had to take off some credit card debt because at that time, I mean, our parents really weren't capable and financially in a position to help us, right?
Mhm.
And so when you're in school, I mean, you think graduate is hard? Like, no. Once you get to like becoming for your doctorate, I mean, we're staying up late nights studying. It is a whole nother level of commitment and time. And so, anybody who has a doctor degree, I mean, it's not even just about the title; it's about how much time and money commitment was involved, and how many years of formal education that took
Mhm.
to then be able to come out. And when we talk about now what we wish would be different in the education system based off of our own experience of when we went through the formal education system, I just wish we really were better prepared in the self-development space, in the financial literacy space, on how money truly works and how to grow your money, and not just preparing us how to be good people, to write a resume, to get a job.
Mhm.
And I felt like that was kind of what they were preparing us for.
Mhm.
Right. And so it's like, okay, we're good doctors. We know good practical clinical skills. And now we know how to write a good resume so that we can apply to be, to be a doctor for someone else. Right. There's nothing about owning a business. There's really no talk about entrepreneurship. There's no talk about investments. There's no talk about how to have multiple sources of income and how to put your money to work. Like none of that is even, that's like all a foreign language.
Mhm.
Right. And so, 2006, we graduate. At the time, we were in Houston. Jaime grew up here in Irving. And so we moved back to Dallas. And at that time, we were fortunate enough. I mean, being a doctor in a private practice position, even for someone else, I mean, that was a hard position to get.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so we were really proud that we were able to get a full-time position, in a private practice working for someone else. And back then I was like, it was the first time we were going to get 6 figures. Man, we were excited. We were eating ramen noodles every which way. I mean, we graduated in May. We had to wait until mid-June or end of July. Before we could practice. We were waiting for a license, right? So we couldn't even practice. And so Jaime and I literally, it's funny that we're buying apartments now, but that's where we lived when we moved over to, we went to Arlington, C-class apartment, 1-bedroom apartment. And we lived the lifestyle of students, even though now we were both doctors with a 6-figure income.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I think that's the next topic. The first part was the commitment and the mindset and grit of, a journey and the path where you want to be. And I think the second part we want to talk about is the lifestyle and the financial budgeting side, right? Because it's not about how much you make alone, right? And we've talked about this in previous episodes about the wedge, right? The wider the wedge, because I think a common mistake of the dream is you get a really good job, you get a really good salary, you buy a fancy house, you buy a fancy car, you get married, you have children, you wait till you're 65, build up your retirement nest, and then at 65, you can retire and then go and do what you want to do and hope and pray you have enough money in that retirement account that you saved up working all those years to be able to live with. Is that how you were taught?
100%. I was taught paycheck to paycheck, so it's like your paycheck comes in on Friday and then it better last you 2 weeks, so that's pretty much what I knew, back then. But yeah, the only reason we decided to get a house a couple years after we graduated, do you remember why?
Yes, because the apartment would no longer let us grill. We had fajita Fridays. Every Friday we would do fajitas. We would cook at home. And, that was our thing. Like every Friday we would grill out at home, and somebody reported us that we were grilling when we're not supposed to.
Yeah. And we couldn't grill anymore. So, we put in our notice, and, luckily back then, it was 2008, whenever, the real estate, crashed back then, and we didn't put any money down, and our house was very inexpensive.
$135,000 for a 5-bedroom, 4-bath home.
Yeah, and it was not very. It was probably 10 years old, maybe 9 or 10.
It was in DeSoto, Texas.
Yeah, so it's southern. If you have Dallas, if you go about 20 minutes south of Dallas, that's where we lived, and that place was a great place. And the houses there were, very, very nice there. And I was like, oh my God, I'm living here for $135,000,
So our monthly payments were not high.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very minimal. And we lived there for 5 years, but we were making excellent money at that time. For 5 years.
Let's tell people real numbers. Like, I want y'all to know real numbers just from our own experience, right? So we graduated with $350,000 of student loan debt at this time. Our goal was to acquire and have our own private practices, but obviously that was it was easier said than done because we had so much debt. And we have no one's going to lend us money at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were new, right? And so we weren't ready to be practice owners to begin with, right? And so when I first applied, they said that they were going to have, so it was probably about 100,000 is what my contract originally said. And I was happy with that, right? I was able to negotiate afterwards to 125,000. But let's just use 100,000 to begin with, because that's what I began with. And that's 5 days a week, right? And then there's a concept we call relief work. So as optometrists, you can apply for other optometry clinics who need a fill-in doctor for weekends or whatever day of the week. And so that's called relief work. And they would pay you back then. The going rate was between $325 to $425, give and take, or if it's a weekday or weekend or what type of practice it was. But I was willing to work extra, and Jaime was also, because we wanted to really build up as much as we can extra in preparation for our own practice. And so we worked every like Saturday and Sunday. And so a lot of times we were doing 7 days a week with 1 day off occasionally, right? Taking a break. But I was like, man, that's an extra, say, $375 or $400 a day. And if I did 8 of these a month, that's that much extra, right? Man, you talk about increase. Continue his 2004 Toyota Sequoia, right? It was already paid off by this time. And then I was driving, I had a car, but we had an Acura. So we had no car payments at this time, right? And so all we really had to worry about was our student loan debt. And guess what? We paid the minimum, because at that time, our interest rate was so low, right? And so it was like 2.2% interest. And I said, well, who's going to ever give us money and lend us money at a lower rate than this?
That is one of our, I guess, leverage secrets. I would say, if for us, a 2.25 interest, on a $360,000 loan, that's like free money. Pretty much, you're not going to get that anywhere, especially right now. Back then, you couldn't get that at that time. So if we paid, $600 a month for 30 years, I'm signing up right now. And back then too, it's like, and now it's like, okay, give me another 30 years, so I can pay even less. And, I'm still at 2.25,
Right.
but we are taught, most of us are taught, if we have debt, to pay it off as quick as possible. Right. And that is one good type of debt that you can take advantage of.
Right.
So we want to pay the minimum, and you can, 2.25 is not going to be very much by the time, you finish off in 30 years versus what we're going to talk about, in a little while. It's investing in assets, investing in yourself, investing in other people. But you can use that money to do other bigger things versus paying down your loan, right? So there are other categories of debt.
That I'll tell you, the category you do need to pay off and down is your credit card debt, right?
It depends on your credit card. If you're talking about American Express, I mean,
it gets paid off. I mean, it gets paid every month.
So, I mean, you can do that on a monthly basis.
But I want to tell you about the classic position of people who live paycheck to paycheck, because I have been there, right? When I was struggling back in the day and trying to make ends meet, because we didn't have anything. And so I had to take out credit card debt. And unfortunately, back then it was so easy to get credit cards, right, in college and whatnot. And so I signed up. And the reality of it was I was working multiple jobs and not making a whole lot. And I was taking 21, 22 credit hours every semester. But I had to live off of credit card debt to make ends meet, right? And then same as optometry school, I needed to buy our equipment that we had to buy up front before our student loans or anything could come in, right? So I had to front a lot of that money and our living expenses, living in an apartment in Houston and things like that. So I had to put some money in rotating high interest credit card debt. How do they pitch it to you? Oh, the first 6 months, it's 0%. or
Mhm.
whatnot, right? And then when you're young and you have no financial literacy and you're just utilizing and buying things, and I have never been a big spender, but these were necessities I needed at the time, right? But the reality is, this is the catch, and this is the hook for most people who are living off of credit cards. It's like you can't get out of the freaking rat race,
Mhm.
right? And so I've been there. So it's kind of like, okay, so now this card is now went from 0% and I'm paying the minimum and now it's 21.5%.
Mhm.
Right. And I can't pay the interest. I'm paying the bare minimum. And then I have 4 different credit cards that I'm living off of. Right. And I'm paying the minimum for each one. And they're all racking up, the lowest interest rate of being 15%, the highest one being 23%. And anytime I'm late, that's another $35 penalty fee if I can't make that one meet. Right.
Mhm.
And I'm picking up extra work, and it's low wage, hourly type jobs to try to
It's very
pay.
difficult to get
Right.
out of that, and some of these other cash loans and things like that you get on the corner of the street. I mean, we have family members that have used that service. It is extremely difficult to get out of that,
So,
especially if you're
yeah.
on a paycheck to paycheck, so, and it is difficult. You have to come to a realization you can't afford it. It's like you
Yeah.
can't afford it. So yeah, if you try to, get new things and, you know, go out leisurely and things like that, it's gonna add up. And if you're not keeping track, like most people don't, that's why people one of the
But
reasons.
let me tell you what I did though. I mean, because a lot of people are in this predicament, but let me tell you what I did to get out of that. Right. And so at that time I had my own apartment, right? Um, and so I learned about consolidation,
Mhm.
right? And so I reached out to learn about this consolidation program. And I said, look, I have 4 credit cards. I mean, I'm paying the bare minimum. I'll never be able to get out of this stupid rat race of paying 20 something percent. I'll never pay off this balance, right? How can we refigure something out to consolidate these credit cards, come for better terms, decrease it, and make sure that I don't miss any payments, build up my credit and everything like that. And that's what I did, right? And living expense is one of the biggest categories if you're living on your own in an apartment or something. And so what I had to do is, I had to give up my apartment. And fortunately, my brother had moved to Houston, right? And so I said, I went to live with my brother. Now, if you don't have a brother, you can live with a roommate or somebody else to split the cost of the expenses of living,
Mhm.
right? Because if you're living in by an apartment by yourself, even if it's an apartment, you have rent, you have bills, you have all these other things that you still have to pay. But if you can like share a room, even if you tighten your space. So I did that for the rest of my optometry years. Was I went ahead and I just gave my brother a small amount each month to kind of help me out, and then I would live with him in one bed, like one room out of his house with his family of 6 or whatnot, right? And so I had to make that decision. Like, yes, I wanted my autonomy. I wanted my own space, but I'm super close to my brother. But I Unmute on the bottom. There you go. Sorry, guys. I see messages. No sound. Sorry. Can you put in the chat? Can you hear us now? It says check mic. So can't hear us yet? Hold on. Can you hear us? Okay, we are back. Sorry, guys. I don't know how long I've been speaking on mute. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay, I can hear you. Thank you, JS. Thank you, Maria. We are where I took off, but I was talking to Cher about getting out of the credit card debt because I remember the feeling like I was never going to be able to pay off the debt, but having the consolidation program, having a clear plan in place of how our spending is and our budgeting. And that's when I learned really deeply how to budget during my, optometry years because I had so much credit card debt trying to get out of that. And figuring out how can we do that. But the consolidation program was something I wasn't even aware of, that they can renegotiate lower interest rate terms so that I would be able, so more of my money would go towards the actual principal and not just the interest, paying the minimum, and how I could make extra resources of income. And I did online sales. I learned how to be creative. And so while I was going to school and working in things, I also created online e-commerce accounts where I could learn, I can sell stuff and buy stuff. And again, now it's not a necessity because I'm like, I'm not going to get out of credit card debt, right? And so I was like, I can only cut so much of my expenses. Where else can I bring in some extra revenue, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that goes into the story of, okay, how do you get out of the rat race right now if you're in a tight position, right? Okay, so let's move on, Lover, to from our optometry. And now becoming first-time practice owners. You want to share the story of the practice owners and kind of how we were still very much in the negative net worth and go from there?
And so I think probably after, because we purchased that first office, we were not in the negative anymore at that time. So
we were after we bought it.
Well, that's after we bought it. So we were saving up because we were living in that, house for, for almost 5 years. And so we stacked up, a good amount of cash, right? So we can actually purchase that office. That office was pretty expensive. And whenever we decided, okay, let's, become an entrepreneur. Actually, we had already been entrepreneur.
We've been entrepreneurs
because
just not practice owners yet.
Yeah. So we were a practice owner because we decided to move in to a space in the mall, like before all this. So, and that particular space, we didn't pay any rent. Mm-hmm. And we were not paying any utilities. And so I was like, oh man, this is a no-brainer, so we were just working for a particular optical there, and they were, pretty much paying for everything. Right. So, and we liked that quite a bit, but, again, it was not our own practice. Right. So, and we had continued, to just save money. But whenever it came time to purchase that practice, it was a great opportunity. And
can you share a little bit? I'm going to backtrack just a little bit because you were working for a doctor with the hope of purchasing her practice, mm-hmm. right? And can you share a little bit about that? Because I want to share the disappointment, the wins, the challenges of that, how much work and effort you put in that, because the goal was to have your own practice. But how that properly prepared you for our next stage. Can you share a little bit about that? I don't think we've shared that story.
Yeah. So I also worked for a private practice, for about 4.5 years, whenever you were in private practice. And I was hired on by an optometrist that was not practicing anymore. She hadn't practiced probably, 5 years prior to me coming there. So she was just having, other doctors come in and work for her. And as whenever I started with her, it's I'm there, the only doctor there, but she gave me the autonomy to do all type of medical care, there. So, and she would bring in new instrumentation, which was fantastic for me because I like medical eye care, right? So, and so she would bring on instruments, and I would see all the patients, do all the medical eye care. And so that was teaching me a different model compared to what eye care is or was back then, right? So, and so I was there for a couple years, and she decided, okay, well, I'm willing to sell you my practice, and so I had grown her practice. I would probably say almost 300% there whenever in 2 year in two and a half
Mhm.
years, right? So that's quite a bit. And so, I was like, okay, well, the third year came and I would bring it up, and she's like, well, let's do, 6 more months, and then let's do another 6 more months. Right. And so it was the 4.5 year mark. It was close to December at the end of the year. And so I had brought it up again, and she said, I still remember the quote. She said, I'm going to die in this office. I'm not going to sell. I was like, wow.
I mean, I think
It's,
his heart sank that day when he
yeah.
came home. And I mean, we had been to her house. She kept saying that was yours practice. I mean, you know, like she kept playing, like she kept telling us, no, there's no doubt this is your practice, you building it. And to have her then, because he grew the practice so much, she was like, yeah, now she's going to die in that practice. She's not going to sell.
Yeah. And, I think I, I appreciate her telling me that way, instead of, I'm not going to sell it to you right now, maybe later on down the road, because she had never said anything like that. She had always said, yeah, I'm going to sell. But whenever she said it very bluntly like that, and, it took me a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
so, cause
No, I
I
think
was pretty,
it took longer than 2 weeks.
no, for my sadness,
Oh, yeah.
but I, looking back after, a few months, and I really appreciated that, and to this day, I thank her for saying it that way, and to me, and being straight up, right, and instead of stringing me along, continuing to do that, for another 4 years.
So, at this point, can you be honest about how much you were making at that point?
So I think at that time, because I was working quite a bit more, I was probably making like 150, 160 at
150
that
to
time.
160 at that time.
Yep.
Now, knowing that she just told you this and the security of your having a stable $150,000, $160,000 for you to take the leap of faith to leave, how hard was that?
It wasn't very hard. I mean, because the way that she told me, it was like I had no choice, so I need to figure it out. Right. So, and then that's whenever, we had talked, and, luckily, I was like, hey, are you able to give me, 3 months here? And so 'cause I didn't want to stick around, first of all. Right. And I was like, okay, well, just give me 3 months. And that's whenever we started looking for our own practice.
But would
And
you say that 3 months was the biggest growth for you? Because now you were like, I have to do this as far as the next transition of our practice?
yeah, the last 3 months, I had to dot my I's, cross my T's, pay a lot more attention to the books, make sure, everyone was kind of coming in, and make sure everything went smoothly with them, being very organized, and making a lot of notes, because I knew the more I did the last 3 months, the more I would be better off in my own practice. Right. So, and that practice probably grew even more the last 3 months right before I left, so I didn't get to take a look at the last month, but I think, the last couple of months for sure. But, I think at that time I was ready for it.
So that's the key.
Yep.
You were ready because you've been prepping, but this is now, it's go time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was for both of us.
Yep.
I left my position around the same time. We both left a secure paycheck that we consistently were getting, that we knew like, holy crap, we got to take this. It's go time.
So, I mean, just adding it up, I'm just kind of thinking it's $300,000 that we were making, good money for us, living, very well below our means. And we need to figure it out, right? Because
Like, you left and I left.
Yeah.
So now we don't have a backup. So all this talk that we've been wanting to do, and this is what we've been wanting and planting, it's go time. So those 3 months, I think, were the most important months of the transition from our secure W-2 position to like, man, this dream practice, it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
We got to make it we weren't ready, but we were ready. Right.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be of course, a practice. It can be a business, right? For anyone that's out there, it's like taking that leap of faith from, your W-2 job that you've been, there 5, 10, 15, 20 years. If you're ready, if you're confident, if you have a plan, on what you're going to do, and, I would recommend, people, and, we get a lot of people coming to ask us, how is this entrepreneurship? I have a great position, and we usually don't leave right away. If you can work part-time, and whenever you establish your own business, then, and if you're set and that's stable and that's growing, then go ahead and ease off of that W-2 even more. And then later on down the road, you can leave, right?
But everything even when we were working, our intention was always there of knowing that was the end goal, was we wanted to have our own practice. So we were very intentional of learning everything as we were working. So all the skill sets and the business acumen that we learned through our journey, even working for someone else, carried over into our own entrepreneurship and building our own practice and molding it the way that we wanted to practice. Taking the good and, being in the relief, working at so many other practices. I've probably worked in total over 20 something eye care practices. And so I've seen all sorts of different models, how doctors work and what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy. And to then like, man, when it's go time and it's our time, like, this is how I would like it to be. Right. And so we can create and build our dream practice based off of all these 20 something practices that we've worked at now. Like, it wasn't wasted time. Like, every single ounce of that was valuable, right?
And I think, what we also gained was knowledge, not just about, the clinical part of it, but we learned everything from A to Z, right? So we learned how to file medical insurance. We know how to, take calls, make appointments, things like that. It was pretty much everything. We already had it inside. And, you were at the office by yourself.
I did everything.
Working up patients. I would do the same thing, and I mean, you have to learn, right? We were out of our comfort zone. We had, you probably had, 15, 20 people, assistants, helping you, right? At that private practice, and there was other 3 or 4 other doctors there as well. And so you going from that, and then working by yourself,
solo,
so you're forced to pretty much, figure it out. Right. So,
but I think that was a great transition into, ownership. And was it easy? No. I mean, when we left and we first bought, when we first acquired our first eyepieces practice, we bought it from an old doc who had very old, antiquated, broken equipment. And we're very innovative. And so we had to go in and invest heavily. Not only did we just purchase a new practice that cost a lot, we now had to put new equipment, all new medical equipment for that. And then his selection of eyewear and everything, because what we wanted to create in the location was more of a boutique. So we invested a lot into the inventory of building that practice. And at that time, it wasn't a busy practice. We really bought it for the potential of the practice, not the revenue that was already generating. But he left so much on the table. He was not doing any medical optometry. He was really not maximizing the equipment because he had old antiquated equipment. He had a really weird model of like he would work half a day in one practice run and go to another practice half a day. So his hours were really weird. And so we really saw like he did no like very cookie cutter like practice. And I was like, this is prime location. And we had looked at probably 15, 20 different practices. And, we really bought this because of location, and the potential of what we envisioned for this practice. And so when Jaime and I said, okay, this is the one, right? After looking at so many practices, and we then utilized everything that we learned in our both clinical and our vision of what we wanted to build. And we built that. And we, at the beginning, I mean, there would be days when we were open 6 days a week. We would sit there, we'd be the first ones in, last ones out, trying to come up with all the different ideas of how we can implement our vision for this practice. And there were days where we might have 2 or 3 patients, right? And where it was slow, right? But it gave us time to implement and have the core team. And we had our core team when we started having staff. We had the original, we call them the OGs. We had 3 people. And they were with us for well over 11 years. And then, one of them still with us today, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's the culture and building out everything that we wanted and having them understand our why and our grit. And we were there with them, just like them. Like we were not leaving early. We were not expecting them to do anything that we weren't going to be doing, right? It was truly a team culture. And that we started at the very beginning. And it was hustle and bustle. And it was hard to build up that practice to where it is today, but
so let's fast forward 5 years, right?
Yeah.
And let's get into the nitty gritty.
So the nitty gritty is like, okay, well now that we have the practices going, let's go to the nitty gritty and like, how do we now grow the money now that we've actually gotten out of the hole? We're making money now. What was their next chapter, right? So the next chapter we're going to discuss is investments, because that was where we were able to exponentially put our money to work and grow for us, right?
Mm-hmm. So whenever there was a particular patient that had come into the practice, and we had invested mainly like in stocks. Back then we were making good money, and I was like, okay, well, let's diversify, or let's start investing. And so we started investing in stocks, bonds, mutual funds.
Well, the stocks and bonds we invested when we first started out of the gate working, right?
401ks. So that's whenever we started early on. And
then 2006, we already started that.
And whenever the patient came in and he was telling me that he was attending this seminar, this mastermind, and he was telling me about investing in real estate, right? So we had invested in real estate before. And so I'm like, oh, wow. He had told me, I remember this. He had told me he had just bought a truck, brand new truck, the latest model. That was like 55,000. And he was in his 60s, probably 62, 63, somewhere around there. He had bought it cash. I'm like, 62, 63, you're almost going to be retired and you're buying something cash. Why would people do that? Right. And he's like, I was like, how did you do that? And he's like, well, I invest in real estate. And we're like, okay, well, tell me more. Right. And so he had invested in this piece of real estate for 3.5 years, and he had great returns. And I was like, is that legit? And he's like, yeah, no, this is all legit. I've driven through to the property multiple times, and I invested, passively. I was like, passively? What does that even mean? He's like, I don't manage anything. I just, I know this particular person for a while, and I invested with them, and I gave them my money. And then as the property continues to grow, after, 3.5 years, this is the return I got. And I've been seeing them. I've been seeing him at this point probably about 11 or 12 years already.
Mm-hmm.
And so I trusted him,
Mm-hmm.
what he was saying. And I was like, well, tell me where this event is, and that way we can take a look. And so whenever I presented that to you, you thought I was crazy, like a psycho. Like, you laughed at my face and you say, get out of here. I was like, no, this is, I've been seeing him for a while, him and his wife, and this is what they did, and I was like, we got to go. So it was a 2-day event, and, it's all the hurrah, kind of Tony Robbins type of thing. And so they can get you pumped up. And then at the end, they pitch the program, right? So we're like, we don't know anything about this. So we're like, I don't know about this, so we went home and we thought about it, and we're like, I don't know. We want to learn about real estate. We're doing really well, right now. But we were comfortable, right? It's like, do we really want to learn new things and start working more, right? And learn more, do we? And so we took the plunge and we signed up, right? And then so we had invested, with a few people, and it was legit.
Yeah,
And
man, I remember the very first passive investment check. I think I took a picture of it because I'm like, oh my God, this is truly mailbox money, not mailbox, no physical check, but it's direct deposit, right? I was like, but what this thing about mailbox money, man, it's actually legit. It's coming in, right? And we had done real estate, not in a large passive. That was kind of like our first investment was in Belize. We did land and built an Airbnb. And we learned a lot of things the hard way doing that. We're proud of it, but that probably wasn't the best use of our money. A big chunk of our money at the beginning, right? Because we locked it up in a lot of land. We locked it up in purchasing and building out something they told us 6 to 8 months, which took over 1.5 years to build out, right? And so you don't get cash flow. You don't get any tax advantages or anything like that, right? But it was a home. It's a legacy asset that we've definitely maximize and use out every few months now. But back then, had we known about passive investment opportunities to put our money to work even earlier, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of busy professionals or high income earners have, they make good money, but there's not the benefit of diversifying to have the money work for you. And I think this is where the meat of the talk is going to be about, is how do you put your money to work for you? Right.
Mhm.
Now that you've built, whether you eat, and you can still continue your high salary. It's not that you have to be an entrepreneur. You can continue whatever position and then also have additional income. You can be an entrepreneur and have a W-2 in conjunction, like Jaime says, right?
Mhm.
There's no need to have to quit your security. I'm just saying, be open to the mind of like, what are your skill sets that you can create additional sources of income? And that's the key, is how do you get consistent cash flow in whatever mechanism that is, whether it's your business, whether it's your W-2 position, but how do you maximize that money, the cash flow, to then now invest it and multiply your money and put your money to work for you? And I think that is the key, right? Is multiplying your money even when you're sleeping,
Mhm.
where you're not in the business having to put more hours, trading more time to put your money to work. And there's so many different asset classes that allows you to be able to do that. Personally, for us, real estate has been a good chunk of that vehicle, right? to be able to grow. And once we started seeing, man, this actually works. So we did one and then we did another one. And these are in big apartments, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, whoa, we would drive by and we would go visit the apartments, even as a passive investor back then. I was like, I own a sliver of this. Like we own a doorknob maybe of this, but whatever. Like we have ownership in this big apartment community and we're getting cash flow for it, right? And so we did like, okay, we'll do another one here. We'll do another one here. And so we started diversifying in different apartment communities, both in Houston and San Antonio and in Dallas. And that's kind of how we started. And, back then the market was doing really well. And so we would put 150,000 here, 50,000 here, 100,000 there, right? And we would get monthly or quarterly cash distributions. And then even though they told us, this is a long-term strategy, so it's going to be parked in about 5 years before you'll ever get your money back. Most of the money's made on the back end. And so I was like, we understand that. We don't really necessarily have to have the cash flow per se. It's nice to have, but it has tax benefits. I'm like, whoa, what tax benefits, right? We are just trying to have other sources of income. And so when we learned about tax advantages and we heard about, cost segregation and bonus depreciation, how you can accelerate all that the first year, because we're high income earners, we were in the highest tax bracket, which was another pain point, was like, okay, we make a lot, but really, how much do you keep, right? If we're paying 34, 37% interest, like if we get to keep more of that, right? Wouldn't that be able to grow our money even more, even faster?
The wedge,
right? And so that was a game changer because a lot of these opportunities for us, within 2-year periods, we were more than doubling our money on some of these, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that allowed us to have, okay, now we utilize that money and keep reinvesting. And so instead of having these big chunks of money come back to us and then go buy a fancy car or upgrade our lifestyle, we kept putting that money back to work. Right. And, so when you kind of see the 10-year journey of like, well, how are you in the negative net worth and then growing to where we are now? It's because we kept doubling up, put that money back to work, put that money back into the investment world and then diversify even more. And then when we transition from being passive investors to being general partners and being active partners, again, that was a big mindset shift, right? Because when you say, I laughed at you and, getting into this space alone was a big hurdle and a mindset shift for me, right? Because the first thing is like, this sounds too good to be true. Like, why would they not be teaching everybody and in school this? Like, why would this be a hidden secret if this was legit, right? And so it took a lot of me getting out to, and us getting into learning from people who are in that specialty niche. I think my mom and my brother, I love them to death. But when they started hearing me talk about real estate and what we were doing and pivoting, and they're like, you're doctors. Why on earth would you be getting into real estate? That makes no sense, right? And so but people speak from the heart wanting to help. But if you're talking to people who are not in that space being successful, they impose the fear upon you, right? Had we not taken that leap and we just continued in our journey, then it would have been hard for us to have time freedom because we still would have been hustling and grinding in our practices all the time, right?
Yeah. It took a while for us to stop listening to people that have not done what you want to do or what your vision is on what you want to do in the future. Everyone wants to give advice, right? Which is great. They try to help, but so many people put, doubts in your mind, my mind, and that have no idea on, what we want to do, right? And we go to conferences, we study, we learn from other people, from experts, but there's always going to be people that are not, with you, right? Again, most of the time they want the best for you, right? And they want to protect you. But if you are listening to people that have not done it before, and that's why a lot of people are not as successful, probably, and not as successful as quickly, probably, right? So for people that, that we mentor, it's like if they come up to us and say, can you give me some advice about RV parks? No, I cannot. You know, I'm not an expert at RV parks. We have an RV park, but I'm not the expert on that. Or self storage or any other real estate asset besides what we are experts
But
in.
you know what the beauty about getting out to these circuits is finding the strong operators that are
Mhm.
experts in that space.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so that's why we continue to go into different conferences, get to know different operators in different markets, learn about what they do. And so if we want to diversify our portfolio as passive investors, which we do, right? Our bread and butter is multifamily and apartments because that's our lane of expertise. But had we been closed minded to only one asset class, we wouldn't have branched out to land development, to doing RV parks, to doing self-storage, to doing hotels, to doing diversifying our own portfolio. But the secret weapon is being able to vet and build the relationships with core strong experts in their space,
Mhm.
and being able to partner and being able to diversify assets, right? We're not going to give advice on an asset if we're not the experts in that. But guess what? We've built relationships with people who are the experts in that space. And how do we leverage their expertise? And so the game is collaboration. So that's part of the success equation, right? Is leveraging and collaboration.
Yeah, a lot of other asset classes is all about competition.
Mhm.
That I've learned, and it's not about teaming up, collaborating, doing bigger projects, right? So it's you and me going at it, learning it only for us, and only for our family. So that's not how it is in the
Mhm.
space that we're in, right? So I can understand, other asset classes doing that, but that's usually not how it works on the spaces that we're in,
Mhm.
So, and I had to learn that, early on. It's like, yeah, I'm learning this. And at first I was like, well, I don't want to share it with them or with them, you know, but you come to the realization on our first deal, it's like we wanted to do it all by ourselves because we had been successful entrepreneurs for a while, but it takes a toll on you because there's so many moving parts, and as you team up, you're going to go much further together. Right.
Right. That's key. Having the abundance mindset and being able to, number one, put your ego down and to say like, hey, we are so much more powerful leveraging someone else who's more senior, who has more experience, who can collapse that time from us and work together, right? And we learned that the hard way because being entrepreneurs and we were already successful, we're very savvy, we're quick learners. We just felt like we could do it all on our own. Why would I want to do this X way, But adaptability is a big part of the equation of this growth journey. And as we're scaling, and I encourage as you're scaling and growing, that like even just this past weekend, we went to a conference and learning different strategies. And immediately I get excited. I'm like, oh, what else can we implement and integrate into our current business that we've already done really well at, but now seeing other people who are successfully utilizing some other tools and strategies, maybe we can do a hybrid and enhance our strategy even more. Right. And so having that open mind to be like, man, who else is out there and doing something successful that maybe if it's aligned with what we're doing, we can integrate some of that, right? And still keep it to the core of our business model, but we can enhance it even better. And that's really the beauty of, being open to learning, always continually learning to see, who else can we collaborate with? How can we leverage and, build together? And then, I always say money's the byproduct, because if you're serving more people and you're collaborating and you're doing it for the right reasons, money is the byproduct and that grows but you do have to have systems. You have to have good teams. You have to have the right people in your inner circle, and have a good vision of clarity of what direction you're moving, right? And so I wanted to read a quote that I thought kind of, I'm going to incorporate. We did this on the last episode where we'll use Zig Ziglar or Jim Rohn, one of the quotes that kind of correlate with the topic we're speaking about. But I really like this one. It says, "What you get by reaching your destination is not nearly as important as what you will become by reaching your destination." And so the person you are and who you are evolving to become, the $1 million, the $10 million, the $1 billion mark is not the end goal. The person you become through that journey, once you reach that destination and milestone, that's the bigger part. Because you know what? Even if you went bankrupt, everything that you've learned and the person you've become to get to that point, you can regrow that, right? You have all of this and resources and people that it makes people have more that fear factor, right?
Mhm.
Of like the person you've become and grown to is more important than that tangible amount of money that you can have, right? Isn't that crazy?
That's well, I'm going to follow that up by saying that I saw a person this weekend change in 1 minute. And this particular person, he was very new to the real estate world of funds, and he didn't know much about funds. And he had just had a baby 2 weeks ago. He had just been laid off just recently, and he didn't have as much disposable income. And at that particular event, we were able to raise a lot of money. And even though he didn't have much, even though his tradition and his family was not educated about the art of giving, he donated $10,000 to the charity, the Child Liberation Foundation. And whenever he was, I spoke to him a couple of times before he did that. And I saw you and him, exit the room, and I saw you both crying, whenever, because he was about to leave, right? And then tell me about the text that you get this morning.
My heart is still like emotional because, oh my God. When I first met him, I didn't think much of it. But, these 3 days, I think his story is always going to stay with me because, he goes, I spoke on Thursday. And like you said, he goes, after hearing you speak on Thursday, because he had just joined our group and he was a first time getting into the real estate space, and he was raising capital for his first project, great opportunity in Detroit. And he was new to it and he was on a crunch. He has 2 weeks to really close this great opportunity. But that's how he came and introduced himself to everybody, that he was new to the real estate and he was his first time and he really needed to raise this gap. Great opportunity. He knows his market, great operators. And, but he was telling me all about this deal and this market that I knew nothing about. And I didn't know him as a person yet. Right. And so he heard me speak on Thursday about really telling people who you are, your why, your story, right? Before you just talk to people about a deal, right? Humanize the experience. Like, people want to know at the core who you are. And so after he heard my talk on Thursday, I met him in the hallway again, and he goes, "Dr. Hua, your talk really inspired me. And I'm a new dad. And I left everything. I just had my baby boy, my second one, and he's only 2 weeks old. And we're not in a financial position for me to really be here. but I really am here. I am a pharmaceutical scientist. I'm very passionate about, he went into his story, and I felt his heart and his energy, right? And I was like, man, I am so rooting for you. I want to see who I can connect you with. And let me see if I, maybe, this person, let me, reach out to this person. And so everybody in the group, and immediately that evening for dinner, right? He went up to the front of the stage. He went into the front. He told his story, and everybody felt him. Like, it's like, man, now we know who you are, and you show up. You've done your homework, and you're in there for the heart, right? That alone resonated so, and it ignited me so much. And then on the last day, on the third day, when we were raising money for, this, and he stands up, and when I saw his name, and he donated 10,000, and I already knew his financial situation, right? And I knew how hard it was for him, just being in his financial position, just having a newborn child. His wife was already like, it was tough for him, right? But he had faith, right? And he was surrounded in a very heart-centered community, and he knew his why, and he felt really strong about that, right? And so when I saw his name and he put 10,000 and he took the mic, he had to leave to catch his flight. But he shared, like Jaime said, like just his upbringing. That was just not the culture of donating and charity. That was not the world that he was in. So not even just $1, but $10,000. Especially, he was probably the person who could not financially be in a position to do that, right? I think my heart sank, and I cried, and I saw him, and I ran out and I hugged him. And so Jaime's standing outside. He has no idea what's going on at this point. He sees both of us just crying, hugging each other, right? And I said, he goes, what you said and your talk again today really inspired me. And I honestly have faith that we're going to bring it to the finish line. I said, I absolutely have faith, and I will do everything in my power to see we're going to help, right? And so sure enough, he texted me, and then yesterday, and he goes, you'll never believe this. He goes, I was on the plane, and American Airlines, it's basic economy, which means they assign you to any random seat, right? And so he sits, and he winds up sitting next to a woman, and the project that he's investing in is Detroit. So she is an investor who knows Detroit market very well. She knows how it's emerging, right? And she goes, my son is an investor. We have a whole pool of investors, right? That would be so interested. So I'll help you with the project, right? Oh my God. So my heart sank, and I got goosebumps. And then sharing the story to Jaime, he goes, I got goosebumps, right? And so the serendipity of like, wow, when you give, it comes back in a different way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so many other people are going to pitch in to help and root for you. And even if no one knew publicly, the universe just has a way of returning that good karma in one way, fashion, or another, right? But I like till this day, if anything I took home this week, and I learned a ton. I met amazing people these past 3 days, but I'll never forget you, Wang. If you're watching, Wang, oh my God, you're going to make me cry again. But you're an awesome young man.
Yeah. And I mean, his personality and his humble feeling, and, and he was not a speaker, he was a replacement for everything worked out perfectly for him. Someone could not make it to the event, and everyone up there had great knowledge already about real estate, about funds. And
He got on a piano for the first time, right?
He was on stage for the very first time ever. He had not spoken in front of any group. He was the least experienced out of everyone, but he got up there and he did fantastic, sharing his experience and his story. But everything worked. And I was watching this the whole time. How is this happening? And then whenever you told me that yesterday, I was like, oh my God, the universe is watching out for him. God's watching him. He's will take care of him. So but I appreciate, and that's why I was saying earlier, I saw someone change in front of my eyes in less than 1 minute, and then great karma is going to come to him. And like you said, in so many ways, it might not come with $10,000 back, but it might come with health. It might come back with love. It might come back with more gratitude. It might come back with him closing his deal or whatever the universe and God decides for him to have. But that was beautiful. And just to kind of follow that up, right? And that's one of the ways that we scale up a little bit faster is we go to these events, right, where a lot bigger people are playing the real estate game or the charity work, right? So because charity, if let's just step back, if you're making, say, a lot of money, you already have everything that you have, but what else do you have, right? We always talk about that, right? What else can you do with all your millions and millions? In this particular event, there was a guy that $1 billion, right? And what else can you do? And a lot of these big players, they give back. They give back a lot of money, and whenever I wasn't making any money, I couldn't give anything. So it's like I couldn't give not even my time because I was still hustling, right? So the big players that are in these rooms, they give back a lot, either if it's money or time or education. But that's why I appreciate these events so much. And that's where you got not just to be around the person to add value to them, but just to learn on how to do it, right? On how you treat another person, even though you might be worth, $1 billion. This particular person treats everyone like gold. He has the biggest heart that.
No, we're not going to be crying live.
Him and his wife have a huge heart, right? And just in this short period of time that we've known them, I've learned so much from them, so we've known them for what, a year and a half or so, but it's it's just a great thing to watch.
It is.
Right.
It is. And it's so moving to have other people in the community really join in the mission. And I know we have some people watching here. We've got, Maria.
A lot of people watching.
Yeah, a lot of people are watching, commenting. But some are the ones who are commenting. I can't see the people watching, but I only know the people are commenting. I know John De Los Reyes and Dr. Nathan Ho is on. Oh, I see my coach here, Doc. Oh, Gary Barnes, another heart-centered person. Love you. But a lot of people who are joining, but we can't see them unless you comment. So, but, to just join in on the mission of giving back. And, some of the most humble people that we know are the most giving people. But, sharing Wang's story, being in a position that he is absolutely not financially there, but I will always remember him, right? And he's always going to be involved in our life now because I will never forget him of what he did. That karma will always, it's going to multiply. And I told him before he lived, what you did today and these 3 days that I've seen him transform in front of my eyes, right? Like it's going to come back 100 times, one way or the other, in so many different ways, Wang, you don't even know, right? So if you're watching this, Wang, you have inspired all of us, right? And keep pushing forward and keep growing. And your sweet baby, and your sweet wife, I know she might be upset at you when you said that, but I know when you have faith, and that's why I'm such a big believer about faith and karma and manifestation and the pureness of everything. It will work out. And if you truly have faith and believe that, it will, right? And surround yourself around with beautiful souls. And that's really the secret sauce. You want to know the secret sauce, how we went from negative net worth to where we are? The secret sauce is, surrounding ourselves around beautiful souls, finding ways to integrate and open our mind and heart to be able to scale and grow. And you know, you don't know what you don't know. Jaime makes fun of me always saying that you don't know what you don't know, but you really do. You put yourself out there and you have faith, and as long as you keep intentions pure, right? You give when you can't give, right? And you share and have that abundance mindset. That, man, people are out there regardless of where they are. The most people who are the most successful, you hear their story of where they came from, the pain they went through, the struggles, and now they're the ones who are lifting, inspiring others. That's their life mission. They've turned their pain into their passion and power to now go help all these other people, right? That's the secret sauce behind everything, right? The finances are the byproduct. You believe it or not, I was not a believer before, when I was like, there's no way, right? There's no way. But we continue to find these beautiful souls that we're so blessed to be around, that keep rooting for us, and we root for them. And, we find more beautiful souls that we can collaborate with and grow a bigger mission, But I think we went way over time today. So
maybe we can continue this because we gave some nuggets, but I think we can add quite a bit more. So I think there could be a part 2 to this. So people,
yes,
because a lot of people come up to us and ask us, how did you do it? It's like you're and another thing, I think we mentioned it earlier. It's you have to have great people, right, that you're partnering up with. And we are so blessed and grateful to have a lot of wonderful people that have good, kind, huge hearts, around us, that are smarter than us. A lot of,
absolutely.
So, and that's another thing, is you got to hire people that are smarter, that are thinking bigger than us, so they can continue to push us, to the next level, and then attending a lot of these events as well too, So, but we had a great time this past weekend, and
this is my second. I was on a call already this morning, and we've already done some crying. I was like, this is our Monday. Today is Monday, right? We're starting our Monday with joyful tears. And we thank you for taking the time to join us, sharing your hearts with us. Each and every one of you that give feedback to us, it really inspires and uplifts and touches our heart to continue knowing that we're on the right path. And we're so blessed and grateful for each one of you. Any last words you want to share, Lover?
Yeah, I just want to follow that up, and we're very grateful for everyone that's been watching, and all the wonderful comments, and we have a lot of people that have been tuning in, so we really appreciate all of you for tuning in. And we're going to be a lot of these people that we talk about, we're going to bring them on our show. And that way you guys can get to learn from them, and we'll kind of make it fun and interactive, on some of the topics. But they're like I said earlier, these people that have wonderful knowledge, that have, great hearts, they want to give, right? And, but yeah, we really want to appreciate every one of you for tuning in. So we are here Mondays at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So if you would like to join us, please tune in at that time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.